Welcome back, folks, to the WP-Tonic show. This week in WordPress and SaaS, we've got a great, and I've been looking forward to this discussion. We've got Tom Morkes, the founder and CEO of Insurgent Publishing, and the great podcast, In the Trenches. We're going to be discussing all things about online marketing, how to build a community, how to build an audience for your business or agency. It's all going to be good stuff. I'm going to let Tom quickly introduce himself. So Tom, can you give us like a 10, 20 seconds intro?
Yeah, I'm a West Point grad, Iraq war veteran. After the military, I went into entrepreneurship, writing, publishing. I started my own publishing company after writing and self-publishing my own stuff. And little by little, that grew into something bigger and bigger and bigger. I've started a couple different kind of companies and side projects here and there. I kind of look at myself like, I think some people describe me as like a launch architect. So I've worked with a lot of companies, SaaS companies, coaching companies, membership companies, to help them launch and scale their kind of their platforms. And I'm the co-founder also of InfoStack, and that's kind of like a bundle company. So we launch bundles of information products, kind of like Humble Bundle, which is in the video game space. But this is more geared towards people who want to learn specific things, who want to achieve their goals for less. So yeah, that's kind of the short summary.
That's great. Cool. And I've got my great co-host, Andrew Palmer. Andrew, would you like to quickly introduce yourself to the tribe?
Yeah, I'm the very nervous co-founder of Bertha.ai. We've just done a partnership deal with Yoast.com. Marika has written a lovely blog post, and it's made our site blow up. We've just got about 300 free signups and a few paid signups from that little campaign. So I'm a little bit on tenterhooks, watching the servers, But yeah, I'm looking forward to this because Tom, you don't look old enough to be an Iraq or an Iraq, as the English people would say, an Iraq veteran. So scary stuff.
I'm sure it all go fine, Andrew, having all your servers on GoDaddy. Before we go into the main part of this, that's an internal joke, actually, folks. Before we go into this great interview, we've got a couple of messages from our sponsors. We'll be back in a few moments, folks. We're coming back. Just want to point out that some of our sponsors have got some great special offers. We've also got a great list of recommended plugins and WordPress orientated services, not only for WordPress, but if you're a SaaS bootstrap entrepreneur. You can get all these goodies and recommendations by going over to WP-Tonic/recommendations. So, Tom, let's go straight into it. So, Tom, you gave a quick intro, but maybe we can have a more deeper outline. So, you just said you were an Iraqi war veteran, and then you got into the semi-crazy world of online marketing and entrepreneurship. So, How did you get into this world then, Tom?
It's funny, especially looking back on it now. So this is about 10 years ago. So I graduated West Point in 2008, went full-time active duty after that, deployed in 2009, 10. So yeah, when you were saying how young I was looking back and I was 21. I turned 21 and I was a platoon leader in Iraq at that time. So yeah, looking back, I'm like, that is pretty strange. That's not the normal course, I guess, for a lot of guys. But after that, around 2013, I was a company commander of a headquarters company. And I was like, I'm really interested in doing something else. It was, military's great and all. It's respectable, etc. But I was really wanted to pursue something creative. At that time, blogging was pretty popular for those few years. And I actually started to read a lot of blogs, specifically like Seth Godin's. I don't know if you're familiar, but I'm sure maybe a lot of listeners might be.
I've actually have interviewed him.
Yes. So I was just like, found his blog, read all his books. I was just like, just devoured it all. And that just led me into this, into this world. At the time, blogging was very popular, and then podcasting was starting to come onto the scene. So I was like, just kind of diving into all this stuff and realizing, there's something here. I got to explore it. So I went and I started a blog. I started a podcast back in 2012, 2013. So pretty early on. And I started self-publishing because I was like, well, I don't have any technical expertise. I can't code. I don't have any practical, real skills. I was at that point not a marketer. I don't know how to do any of that stuff. But I was like, I'm just going to use this as a time to experiment and learn and see what I can do with what I have. And so it was just kind of little by little, starting with the blog, publishing a couple of books on my own, self-publishing, figuring out then how do I get traffic and readers and sales, right? That's the next thing. After you do something creative, you're like, okay, now where's the money? So it's like, how do I actually get new customers? How do I get new readers? And then trying to solve that. And again, just little by little, as that grew, it was then moving into when some people saw what I did, they were like, hey, can you help me? So I was like, yeah, let's figure it out. So I started working with other companies, with other individuals, and little by little worked on, campaigns. And I was kind of strategic about that. Like a couple times I'd work for free just because I was like, I know if I do a good job for this guy, he's going to make sure other people know. And sure enough, that's exactly how it went down.
All right, that's great. Over to you, Andrew.
I mean, everybody, you've said that so easily, figuring out the customers that I want, figuring out the people I want to target. And you said it like, even with a smile on your face, the most asked question is, how do I get customers? How do I get, so just, give me 20 seconds or a minute on how you figured that out. And, let our tribe get some of your insights in how you actually figured out what your customers were and how you got them together.
Yeah. The short answer, I think this may be most practical or pragmatic for those listening, is just model what other people are doing that's working. Don't just model somebody else, but make sure that what they're doing is actually working. Because there's a lot of people who are doing stuff. There might even be people who are doing stuff that looks like it's working, but it's a different thing to understand what's actually working. And then I look at that and I say, well, how do I just replicate what somebody else is doing it, but doing it in my own style, my own way, and then make it work? And so it was like, just kind of like, and then that's where you tap into all these these little bits of knowledge and wisdom, like, diving into the great copywriters, the great direct response marketers, the great people who are building like great platforms. So at the time, obviously I was in publishing. So I was curious about moving books, but books eventually moved into, hey, can you help do what you did with these book launches? Can you do this for our SaaS platform? So I was working with companies like Teachable, more recently Circle, and some other companies like that. It was working with educational companies like the Growth Institute with Vern Harnish and stuff like that. So it was like little by little, like, hey, can you just apply the same stuff that gets eyeballs over here and then generates the sales? Can you do that for us? And what I found fundamentally was that you have to have a reason for people to come and check out what you're doing. There's a ton of noise online, so you have to find out some way to cut through the noise. So I'm always looking to say, where's the audience? How do I get in front of that audience? How do I get an endorsement in front of that audience? So I like to try to get, you just mentioned Yoast. How's those servers holding up, right? So
yeah,
it's
pretty good.
Pretty good. There you go. But it's like,
it's amazing what GoDaddy can do.
Right. Yeah. And it's just, that to me is the gold, is if you can land really good referrals, really good partnerships. So fundamentally, I didn't realize it was going down this rabbit hole, but a lot of what I've done has been built on affiliate marketing and influencer marketing, like the fastest path to the customer. And then from there, of course, we can expand out. Like the most recent company, for 4 years, we've basically been entirely partners and affiliates. And we haven't tapped into paid traffic. We don't pay. In fact, I pay a few boost posts here and there, but I'm not running paid traffic. We're not doing any content marketing. We're not doing anything except partners and then focusing on our product. And that's it. And that's enough. That's enough of a lever. That well is so deep. I could pull that lever probably for another few years before I ever tap it and then move on to something else. Although now we're looking at, hey, how do we get into content marketing? How do we get into some of this other stuff to spread like the word and grow our reach more organically outside of relying on partners? But now our database, our list is big. We have clout, like all these things have started to compound because of that, but it started with partners.
Yeah,
cool.
Sure.
Brilliant. It's a tough thing to do, isn't it? John, over to you, mate.
Yeah, sure. So, partnerships seem to be big. So, based on your experience, though, and observation, what do you see as some of the most often, or the mistakes that you observe the most that people are making in marketing, Tom? Online marketing,
Yeah. My experience, and again, I'm not just saying like what I'm seeing out there, but I would say that the problems I experience then are when people come to me and then hire me, or they ask me questions. Yeah. So those things that I deal with a lot of times when people aren't getting any kind of traction, we'll say, quote unquote, they have a product. They spend a lot of time investing in the product, whatever it is that they're trying to sell, the offer. But again, they have no path to the customers. They have no path to actually getting it in front of somebody. So number one is they don't actually have a path to the customers. The second thing is whatever their offer is, a lot of times where the stumbling block is, maybe they even have access to an audience or they could tap into an audience, but nobody like pulls the trigger and nobody actually like buys. It's usually positioning. A lot of times, like it's really subtle stuff sometimes, but it's like how you're actually positioning, what's the messaging around it, who is it for, why do people care? Because there's so much out there of anything. You go into any niche, I feel like, and we work in a lot of niches now with a lot of stuff I do. So I work in like, we do some stuff in like the health space. We do some stuff in the business and marketing space, some stuff in the writing and publishing space, different niches and stuff like that have vastly different audiences. And each one you go into, you're like, wow, it's like saturated with competition. So I'm always looking for an angle that's going to be different enough to hook people in that audience and make them turn their heads towards us. If you try to do the same thing that everybody else is doing, it kind of gets boring, and then it can maybe still work in a small way, but you're not going to get like those massive viral launches. You're not going to engineer anything like record setting, which is what we've done for some crowdfunding campaigns and some of our launches, which was like kind of engineering that virality by making it interesting for people, if that makes sense.
It does. Just got a quick follow-through question before I throw it over to Andrew again. As you were giving your answer, you were saying small change. I can't remember the precise wording, but you were indicating to me that small changes in copy, in positioning can we just focus on that a little bit more? So are you saying that you can, you got good, there is product customer fit. There is a desire for it. But it just changes in the positioning of the wording can make a big difference based on your experience.
I have, I'll give you two examples. One is a client that's like a real simple, almost like generic, like you'll hear it and you'll be like, well, obviously, but like, that's a good example. And then I'll give you a personal example. So one was with a client and she was in the publishing space, and she had a publishing company. She wanted to get more people into her publishing company, but she also did like editing, design, the whole thing in and around helping like that next level. It's effectively a hybrid publisher, and was making sales. So obviously had an offer that was working, but not converting high enough. It was effectively like kind of working for those almost like slave labor wages that many of us bootstrappers work when we're first getting started, and couldn't kind of break out of it. And had tried to do some marketing campaigns, but each one of them kind of landed her in the red. And I learned this kind of afterwards. She joined my coaching program, and basically one of the first things we identified was you have an offer that works, it converts, people are happy with it, but the messaging is blah. It's like I don't know if it could be more generic. And for her, I was like, let's just take a look at the client. So this applies to people who have customers already. Let's take a look at the clients. Let's do like a client profile here, and let's look at patterns. Can we find it? I try to always use pattern recognition for something and see if I can extract something useful. And with hers, it was like 90% of her clients were women, but she wasn't catering anything toward women. So the very obvious thing was, hey, let's just make like whatever the next thing you do, let's just focus it solely on women. And now she runs the Women in Publishing Summit, which has been going strong for like 4 or 5 years. It's huge in the publishing space. And she has a massive audience. And I have I did a case study with her on my podcast to go through like the nuance of it. But it was that little thing, that little positioning. I'm not saying just going, hey, just let's focus on women or let's just focus on men as the differentiator. Sometimes demographics matter though. And sometimes if it's a pattern that matters, then go with it.
Yeah,
I totally agree. I think, John, who did we have on here that was just the positioning? Was her name Amanda or Anthea or something? We just
I can see her, but unfortunately, I've got a memory like a sieve. So
pretty cool.
So over to you, Andrew.
Well, I'm gonna jump to a question actually, because I want to. So what's come onto your personal marketing radar that's got you excited? Maybe Bertha and the Yoast thing got you excited. Who knows? Even though I don't host with GoDaddy, although I love them. You're muted, Tom. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, for sure. No, I think, it's funny. I'm kind of boring. So I look at stuff that's coming on new and I'm very, very skeptical. I'm skeptical of a lot of new things. I'm skeptical of new platforms because I was from 2012, 13 till 2022. So 2012 to 2022, what's happened? What have we seen come and go? I mean, so many platforms have come and gone. I don't know if you guys remember, what was it? There was some big one, Periscope, Blab. We were on Blab for a while.
Yeah. I loved Blab.
Me too. We actually ran a summit on Blab and broke a Guinness World Record using it. And then it was like the next year the platform's gone because we were the longest live stream. It was like 54 hours or something like that. We were just going for it.
I thought that was one of the most original platforms I've seen. I don't know why somebody else doesn't bring it back in some way, but nobody.
It just seems like it feels like there's so much potential, but I don't know the behind the scenes technical limitations of something like that. I couldn't believe that for a platform like that, it held up. It did what we needed it to do. So but all these things kind of came and went. So all of a sudden you're like, oh, Periscope's going to be the next new thing. This is going to be the next new thing. Okay, then there's TikTok, there's whatever, there's all these things. So platforms don't really, I'm very skeptical of platforms. What I'm not skeptical of though are like creative joint ventures and things like that, and then tapping into new technologies and stuff like that. So I'm still very hesitant on like blockchain stuff. I think a lot of it's just like marketing speak. But the smart contract concept is very interesting for info product creators, I think, and educators and people selling information products or any creator selling anything. The idea of the residual income that could come from people who purchase it and resell it. So the idea of that reseller piece and then being able to capture a piece on the back end, that kind of tech, I think, is very fascinating. And I think we'll see a proliferation of it. But again, I'm just kind of now starting to dabble in that area. So I don't have much to report back on it yet.
Well, a lot of people don't misunderstand blockchain. They think it's all about money, but it isn't actually, and just while I'm there, because the deal that we came to with Yoast actually started last December. It's from a message from Yoast himself saying, I like Bertha, let's chat. So it's taken all this while and WordCamp Europe and meetings and all this kind of stuff to see what's going on. But they, Yoast and Marika are investors, and they invested in a particular thing, WordProof, I think it was. And that uses the blockchain to actually control your copy because it's obviously SEO focus. So it puts a timestamp via the blockchain on your copy to allow you to prove that that's your copyright. Because a lot of, we all have to do take down notices. You've stolen my copy. I mean, just in the Facebook groups the other day, I saw that 4 people had their whole website cloned, and other people were using their training, selling their training courses as their own. Crazy. So so things like WordProof on the blockchain, very helpful.
It's all the boring stuff outside of the main stuff that you hear about with the blockchain that's the most interesting. It's the smart contract stuff. It's the instantaneous nature of it. The crypto stuff, the money piece is like the scammer high level piece, like that. There's just too much.
Tom,
not all of it, but a lot of it is where that's happening.
Yeah, but Tom, it's got very strong echoes to the early days of the web, really, because I think what Andrew said, that proof of copyright, of ownership, is one of the strong areas, and also cutting down the cost, the middlemen, through transferring money from one place to the other. There's a lot of intermediaries that take their cut about the transfer of money or securities in general, isn't there? So you can see, but when it comes to what we've seen over the past few years around cryptocurrency, I'm definitely not as enthusiastic, to say the least. But there we go. I think it's time for us to go for our break. We had a little bit of divergence. We got into cryptocurrency. You never know what you're going to get on this podcast, do you, Tribe? But if you're a regular, you are used to it. We're going to go for our break, and we'll be back in a few moments, folks. We're coming back. I think I'm doing a pretty good job. I can tell by Tom's expression that he thinks I'm doing a reasonable job, being that he's an experienced marketer and podcaster himself. I always get a bit nervous when I get an industry expert like Tom. But before we go into the other questions, I just want to tell about my newsletter. You need to sign up for the WP-Tonic newsletter. It goes out on every Sunday or Monday. It's mostly about the stories from the Friday show where we go into WordPress and tech news stories. And I write an editorial that goes on a wander, but it's highly entertaining. To get all this, all you have to do is go over to the WP-Tonic newsletter and sign up, and it will be sent directly into your inbox. So, Tom, on we go on to this wonder of an interview. So, I think a lot of people, obviously, there are storm clouds brewing in the economy. Valuations have been hammered. What I call the COVID bubble has definitely been burst. I'm a little bit puzzled why people are so surprised that there's been a bit of a retraction, and there might be a further retraction, because we've had a couple of years to say a bubble would be a slight. So I'm a little bit puzzled, but I don't even know why I'm puzzled. So what do you see happening in the next year when it comes to what I call the new online reality? Would you agree with that statement, and what's your own thoughts, Tom?
It's funny. I'm kind of contrarian in that sense. I think it's interesting because I think there's these high level things that are being engineered, right? And these shifts and changes in these economies and stuff like that. And there is obviously then a flow to the online, and there's all this talk about metaverse and stuff like that. Again, something I'm so skeptical of all that stuff. And I'm like, okay, let's see it. That's fine. I know there'll be first movers who can take advantage of those things. Like, go for it. But to me, I'm like, I was back in 2012. I was like, online's the way to go. It's just so obvious to me. There are so many opportunities, and people just seem to be missing these opportunities. Like, I couldn't believe more people weren't doing it, or being more aggressive about it. And then in the last couple of years, you see this big shift online where people are moving online. I am now of the mindset where I think, okay, there's still a lot of growth, still a lot of opportunity in going online. But I actually think going offline strategically, there's some opportunities there that people are missing because of that push online. So I'm kind of like in this in between, if that makes sense, kind of like a barbell strategy, Nassim Taleb, anti-fragile. Like, that's kind of how I think about things. So I'm like, I think the potential downside is people move everything online. And what will happen is while we'll just experience the last 2 years what governments can do to physical based businesses, we have yet to see what they can do to online based businesses. They haven't gotten their hands wet there yet. And all of a sudden, if you move fully online and that's all you've got, that might be, again, I'm an anti-fragile kind of guy. I like to have a few things spinning at a time or have a backup plan. So for me, I'm just very hesitant to move too fully into that. Like, if somebody had a brick and mortar business, yeah, have something online, but that doesn't mean to necessarily get rid of the brick and mortar business completely. I think there's very strange things afoot over these next couple of years and what will transpire.
I totally agree with you, but unfortunately, the brick and mortar businesses that I've got interest in are restaurants, and we're suffering from a dearth of staff. It's not anything else. We still got the traffic. We did 50 people the other day at a private party, and Sunday was phenomenal with 50 people. I went off to Goodwood Festival of Speed. Let them get on with it. But one of them is a pizza place, so it's we managed during the pandemic to completely transfer to online ordering, through the various channels, including our own website. And I think what you're saying is right. If you see an offline opportunity, property investment, for instance, or buying some land, and then selling that, doing a JV with a developer, I think you could be you could be in both worlds as well. So, you know, if you've got some money to invest in a bit of land, you can buy land in America for hardly anything. In the UK, you can still get some good deals. But the point of the pandemic was that everybody went online straight away. You know, we were inundated as a web agency. We were inundated with people saying, I want to do this. Jonathan was inundated with people wanted a learning management system. There was a guy that uses LMS that was a child entertainer building balloons, you know, showing building animals out of balloons. So he went off and did a learning management system of building balloons online, made $250,000 in a weekend by selling a course of how to build these things. So there are, as you say, there are opportunities out there.
I'm going to copy the course tomorrow and, you know, transfer my business model. You know.
Right.
There we go. I always knew the money was in balloons. There we go. But it's interesting though, because just to recap what you were saying, Tom, is that if you know, I'm totally online. My whole business is based on online. I've got actually 2 businesses, but I am totally online. But you're saying if you are from the traditional one, what I think you're saying is if you can, you are advising, don't totally pin all your hopes online. Try and have a more balanced look over everything. Would that be a fair synopsis?
Yeah, and I don't have a brick and mortar, so I want to be clear about that. Like, I'm not necessarily advising on that piece. I just see like these broad sweeps, and when all of a sudden these businesses get shut down and real estate kind of plummets in the commercial space, I'm like, somebody at a high level is taking advantage of this opportunity right now, and there's a reason. And you got to be able to look like 3 to 5 years out or maybe more. So it's just one of those things where I just look at that and say there's like all these strange red flags happening. I think certain things are kind of obvious, which is like the nature of having, like, I don't think you need a commercial space to have your online business. I think you can do it remotely. I'm fully remote. That was the other thing. I've like been remote since I started this. I was like, the opportunity for remote was so obvious to me right from the get-go. So now more things are moving remotely. That's becoming pretty obvious. There's still cases for that, to have a commercial space for a virtual business in some sense. But for a lot of bootstrappers, freelancers, things like that, or small teams, just take advantage of that. And then the other thing is, for me, it's more like, I guess the barbell strategy is, well, I don't have a brick and mortar business, but maybe I can get into real estate. I can get into other physical based things and have that as like kind of the barbell strategy, the anti-fragile strategy, to say, okay, I got my business, it's virtual, it's online, but then I have these other physical things. I don't want to lose sight of that. I think this whole trend towards the metaverse almost seems like a giant setup. It's like a ruse. Like I'd be cautious of that. Like, I'm going to invest all this money into these digital assets. It's like digital assets.
Well, Tom, what could go wrong with Mark running everything? What could go wrong in the metaverse? Let's go.
I just want to interrupt there quietly on the metaverse. I read this morning there are 300 startups with millions of dollars in the bank from VCs that are just concentrating on the metaverse, and they're literally going like that, finger in the air, give us $20 million or $30 million or $100 million and we'll explore the metaverse. We've no idea what we're going to do, but we're technically adept, you know, let's have it, but we need some finance to be able to do that, and we need about 50 really qualified people to give us $30 million. You know,
it's just like the tech, the early part of the tech boom, right? It was like all of a sudden, it's just like all of a sudden there's a ton, because there is a ton of money out there, an insane amount of money that wants to be put into places right now. And so, listen, if you're one of those people who are like, I'm going to take advantage of this money that people are dishing out to fund this enterprise, go for it. I'm just more thinking, I guess, more on the consumer side or the small level side. Like, I'd be real cautious about moving into those spaces, sticking more with maybe like hard assets or digital assets, but like using the kind of the traditional place right now, the traditional, quote unquote. They've been traditional for maybe like 10 or 20 years, not very traditional, but like the stuff that definitely generates revenue, that is consistent, that you have more control over. This kind of metaverse stuff, we don't know where it's going to go. NFTs, you see this like whole boom and then bust almost with NFTs. And it's like, that's what I'm skeptical of, are these things. And there's still a ton of money to be made in there. It's like, that's the whole strange part of all of this. I say all this, like, I don't know. It's maybe what I'm saying is a giant buyer beware. You know.
No, well, I understand. I think I understand exactly what your position, because the metaverse, it's a bit like the blockchain. I'm definitely think it's a future technology that will find its place. But at the present moment, I think what Andrew was trying to point out, it's high risk, high return scenario. You got to know what you're getting involved in. It's a bit like Jason Kamatatis. I butchered his surname from This Week in Startups. An individual that he's an amazing person. I've never had an individual that I have such extreme mixed feelings about. I find him very insightful, or I find him a self-righteous prick. But he was pointing that out in one of his recent podcasts, that, a lot of these big idea things, they're high risk, they're investments that you've got to be prepared to sit on for 10 years plus.
Or it's like the kind of nature of it where it's like you got to get in fast, get the money quickly, and then get out, kind of thing, before it goes boom. But again, I feel like that's not my personality. That's not my style. I mean, there are entrepreneurs who are great at that, who can go in and exploit something or do something and make a bunch of money before the whole thing crashes. You got to be a first mover kind of thing in that. But again, still the same. The nature is the same. High risk, high reward, or very high risk, high reward though too. So I agree. Like there's almost like, again, there's like these diverging paths. One is like, do I quickly go in, try to make a buck before the whole thing shifts? I just feel like the stuff is shifting so quickly in the last few years. It's like, to build something on even a technology right now is very strange, because I'm like, the stuff, even the technology, the underlying technology of things is shifting very quickly.
Tell us about that. That's WordPress.
We got WordPress doing that, but there's, just on the metaverse thing, wasn't it some guy bought a house in the metaverse next door to Snoop Dogg's for 200 grand, and then sold it the next day for 650 grand because the guy wanted to live in the metaverse next to Snoop Dogg. It's just like, what's that about? It's just crazy. People have the issue, I think, is that we've got a real, we don't want to get too political here, but we've got a real 1% going on in the world, haven't we? We've got people with far too much money, and they just have no clue what to do with it. So, do you know what I'll do? I'll buy a 6-bedroom mansion in the metaverse for 650 grand because I can. It's like weird.
Yeah, true. So, just to finish up the podcast, it's a unpleasant truth, Tom, but we learn the most from our biggest mistakes, well, I feel. So I don't know if you're prepared, is there any kind of real big business mistake that you like to share with the tribe that you made, that with reflection you learned a lot, and maybe you can share with the tribe what you learned from that big mistake?
I don't know if I have a big mistake. I think I just have a lot of small mistakes. And a lot of small mistakes kind of got me to where I am. So I don't really have regrets about them. I have, mistakes of like, doing collaborations or partnerships with people before I really, really could trust them. Clients, or getting burned by partners or clients in the past. But it's like, I don't know, I was new to this stuff. I was new to these things. Spending a lot of time and energy on certain projects that I was like for sure on. But again, kind of coming back to that original point, like what's the path to the customer, and then can I validate it quickly? These little mistakes, I look at them like little mistakes because at the time they might have hurt me when I was just bootstrapping, but they were small enough on a scale that they didn't burn me completely. Like I wasn't out for the count. It was more like I got knocked down, but I was able to get back up and go to the next one. So I don't have like a huge failure mistake yet, knock on wood, like hopefully.
Oh, I'm so your answer. Actually, I really liked your answer, Tom, actually.
I think we've all, but I've certainly been burnt by business partners. I've been burnt by family. And when money gets involved, you have to be very, very careful and where you draw the line about who's in control of the cash. Now I don't do anything where I'm not 51% shareholder. It's as simple as that. So You know, in it's just, I've been burnt so many times. It's just crazy, and it's you wonder why. You say, well, is it me? And you kind of go, no. They just see a lot of money and, you know, carrying on, and they go, right, I'll have that. I'll build a swimming pool with it, and I won't tell him. You know, and it's really
especially
weird.
A little tip, tribe with family. If you lend money to family,
Don't expect it back.
Don't expect it back. If you do get it back, that's really fantastic. But don't delude yourself that anytime soon that you are going to get it back. Just do it out of your own conviction and don't expect it coming back. That's all I've got to say to you, beloved tribe. So we're going to wrap up the podcast part of the show. Tom's really been kind and agreed to do a little bit of bonus. We're going to delve into the digitality world a little bit deeper. To join us on the bonus content and to watch the whole interview, all you have to do is go over to the WP-Tonic YouTube channel and watch it all. And please subscribe to the channel. It really does help the podcast, the channel, and the tribe in general. So, Tom, what's the best way for people to find out more about you and your views and ideas? I suppose it's the podcast, is it?
Yeah, or just I'd say go to tommorkes.com, TOMMORKES.com. I still have a newsletter, tons of free and pay what you want resources. And then there's the podcast In the Trenches with Tom Morkes, which is
I highly recommend it, tribe. Go over there. All the links will be in the supporting show notes. So go over there and find them so you don't have to do a hunt, tribe. So, Andrew, what's the best way to find out more about you?
Give me a call. No, at Arnie Palmer at Arnie Palmer on Twitter. This is andrewpalmer.com and Bertha.ai. So that's where I'm at the moment. And support us during our Yoast marketing partnership. And try out Bertha.ai. It's great.
Yep, that's for sure. We'll see you next week with another great guest like Tom. We'll see you soon, folks. Bye.
Bye.
So on to bonus content. So it's been an interesting ride the past couple of weeks, actually. I've had some major clients kind of cancel, trying to get out of written contracts. I've had a few discussions. I've had some sponsors kind of having talks with me. But I've also had some good experiences as well. I've had some major backing. It's been a real up and down month. June has just been bonkers, you know. Do you sense that in general? Is that the business environment that people are having at the present moment?
I mean, I feel like in the last year or two, it's kind of been like that. Because when all the COVID stuff started going down, it was funny. We're digital with a lot of stuff we do, but we still had partners like pull out of campaigns. In America, there were riots or alleged riots in some places.
Well, I actually live in America, Tom.
Where do you live?
I live in Carson City, Northern Nevada.
Excellent. Okay. But you didn't experience any riots though. So we had some partners in New York and stuff like that, and all this like crazy stuff that happened the last couple of years. And so it's kind of one of those things where I was like, nothing I can do about that. I'm just going to grind. I'm just going to do what I do and I'm going to make it happen and move on to the next one. So I almost feel like the same way here. A lot of weird, strange shifts. I agree. Money it's weird. I've had, it's interesting. You mentioned partners and stuff like that, contracts. I've had that recently with our publishing contracts. And I'm not, I probably shouldn't say this. It's like, I'm not the kind of person who's going to go take legal action.
It should be avoided, but you know, sometimes people go bust. They can't pay you. They can't pay you, or you know, they've had a long-term business relationship, and they're going through a hard time, and they say, and you do them a favor if you can.
That's it. And I'm like,
but then you got other people that got to say they got a laissez-faire attitude towards contracts and agreements would be a slight understatement. It's the most bizarre.
Well, we had it with Bertha. You know, I went on a quite an expensive funding round in America about 3 months ago. A few $1,000s spent on flights and stuff and whatever. did an agreement, got a nice investment, shook hands on it, did the safe agreement for Bertha.ai, and within 2 weeks the deal was off because the guy genuinely was, lost a quite a big client, didn't have the kind, $1 million a year client, and didn't have the forward thoughts that they could either get them back or get someone to replace them or whatever, and just said, look, I've got to pull out. How do you feel about that? And a handshake, as you know, in all worlds is a contract, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, listen, man, just take care, be good.
You got to be realistic.
There's no resentment there. You just go, and he was completely surprised and just said, wow, it's really cool of you. But there's no point in having people invest in you and everything, and it's painful for them. You got to make it the best experience possible, and that includes customers that are buying from you as well. If they've got budgetary concerns or they suddenly can't afford something, then you just say, right, I'm going to stop working for you now, but come back to me in 3 months, 6 months time when you've survived, and let's see.
It's just that it's really surprising and bonkers. I've got another interesting question. Well, I think it's interesting. I'll let you judge it, Tom. Expectations, partner expectation, business partner expectation, client expectation, industry. I've struggled regularly about this, about dealing with clients' expectations. I thought, or dealing with business, not direct business partners, but people I'm working with, expectations in general. And I've really tried to really make it communicate the best what I'm going to be providing or what we're going to be providing. But then I've sensed that even we've tried, they thought they were getting something completely different, or it's obvious that they're disappointed. And it could be that some people are just trying it on, aren't they? Some of them probably are. But what's your own experience about expectations?
It's like
I only expected that question. That's the
it's like, it's man. Because there's a few.
Because I struggle. I'm 58 now, and I struggle.
Yeah, I it's funny because I'm going down the path now. We're just looking at one of the kind of the entities we have, like what would it look like to sell it. So I don't know. It's totally new area for me. I've never done it before. We have some interested people, scouting it. And so all of a sudden I'm so green on this. I'm like, but I've been burned enough to know, okay, don't just show them everything. Whereas like normally I'm the kind of person to be like, yeah, here, it's a very transparent, like here's everything, whatever. Yeah. But I'm like, now I'm mature enough to know that's not the approach. So
I did sell a business for sort of mid 6 figures about 3 years ago.
Yeah.
So eventually you are going to have to share everything.
Yes.
Otherwise you're not going to get the sale.
Right.
And an NDA is very rarely worth the paper it's written on, but you do what you just have to. Eventually you build up trust with people. In fact, I sold 3 businesses in 1 year. One of them was really easy. I literally Facebook messaged someone, said, do you want to buy this? She went, yeah, I'll have that. All right, is this much? She went, yeah, sent me the money and I sent her the stuff. It was simple as that. No NDA, no contract, nothing. There you go. You own it.
I need Andrew. I need you to be an advisor for us.
No problem. I'll take you through the pain points. It's painful, and also one of the things that I say to people, especially, and also when you're looking for funding. Bertha's not necessarily looking for funding, but people come to us and say, do you want funding? We say, yeah. It distracts you from your core business. So you have to be very careful. You almost have to calendarize and say, or diarize and say, right, that's what I'm going to spend on the sale. Those are the hours of the days that I'm going to spend on the sale. And even if they chase you for information, you say, yeah, that's allocated for 10 o'clock tomorrow morning. I'll get back to you at 10 o'clock in the morning because I've got 7 other businesses to run, right? So it's managing their expectations as well as yours. So
I gather from your initial expression for my ridiculous question is that you struggle with expectations yourself.
Well, yeah, I mean, well, I also the big thing, yeah, it's come back what Andy was saying on the trust piece. To me, that's like been the number one thing. It's like if I can work with somebody for a bit and get to know them, and we can work, and they're the kind of person I can trust. That's been the best experiences I've had with people. Now that's not foolproof, obviously, but it's like I definitely have used like, okay, I have an intuitive sense of, who's trustworthy. Have I gotten to know the person well enough? Is their word their bond? And to me, that's been just that gut instinct has so far steered me in the right direction better than any like contract that I'm not going to legally pursue like aggressively to enforce. I'd rather just the person I'm working with gets it. And we're both like have a certain level of like honor and respect and dignity. And like, we're whatever. And we get when like a handshake's a handshake kind of thing. And when that's the kind of person those are the people I like to work with. But at the end of the day, it's like coming back to it. And granted, I haven't done any very like high level, big business deals or things like that, where that probably is not the right advice. So I'm talking, stuff, slightly smaller stuff, smaller scale stuff, bootstrapped collaborations and businesses and things like that, where it's like, we don't have the resources or a legal team behind us to enforce things. I need to be really certain I'm working with somebody that's trustworthy. And that's kind of just, I bank on that. And then so far, so good.
Or you have, I'm not saying that I've got partners in business now, and we definitely argue, but in a very constructive way. Sometimes we disagree and we don't want to go in a particular direction. But the point is that you've got to build that friendship relationship as well, because I believe that the people you work with, you have to be friends with, because you need to socialize with them. Sometimes you're going to network events. My business partner in Bertha, Vito, and I, we travel well together. We traveled so well together to Cloudfest a few months ago to Germany that we, at the end of the journey, we said, we haven't had an argument yet. You've made that word up. What's that word? You've made it up. We've got to have an argument about something. And we bicker and we have our disagreements, but you move forward through that, and you get through that. And it's the same as any kind of relationship. As long as you can have a deep understanding of the person's requirements of you, either as a person or as a business person, and the requirements of the business, I think that you can generally get over those kind of issues. What I don't like with business partners, and it happened to me in the past, is they ghost you. Well, I had one business partner disappear for literally 6 months, come back and say, "Where's my money?" And I said, "Well, you can just go away." That's not the kind of business relationship we want. So and I've heard since, because I'm a business coach as well, that's happened so much. And part of my business coaching is mediating between people when that's happened. So it's tough. People are people. You just have to accept that, but you have to also find a middle ground to either get on with it or exit the best way you possibly can.
Right. So Tom was, Tom, I know you're surprised, but I'm a joint citizen. I swore allegiance to the flag, Tom.
Congratulations. Welcome.
Yeah, my oath to the flag means something to me, Tom.
Does it supersede the Queen's oath, though?
Well, you don't have the oath.
You don't have to do an oath. We don't get up in school and have an oath. We're not a cult like you guys.
No. That's right.
No, I'll always be. I always will be British, but I would never do anything to hurt America. So I'm kind of a hybrid.
Yes.
There we go. I think it's time. Tom's been very gracious with his time and my ridiculous questions. Tom, you have to come back hopefully at some stage. It's been a great conversation. Thank you so much. And we're going to end it now, Tribe. We'll be back next week with another great interview. We'll see you soon, folks.
Cheers, guys.